So my name is Michael Gray, and I have done. I'm one of those guys that has been a jack of all throughout my life. I worked in the corporate world for about 20 years, and left that and had my own business. And then I did something else, and did something else, and did something else. And I've always had a side gig along the way because that's just how I'm wired. And I never understood why I was so much like that until I actually did the process that we're going to do today. I never understood why every few years I moved on to something new and something new and something new, and didn't understand the power of that and the strength of that. And some of you, just in my saying that out loud, are going, that kills my soul. I can't imagine being that person. And that's right, because you're on the other side of a scale, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, you may think people like me are really super odd or super weird or just annoying. If he moves my cheese one more time, I'm gonna kill that guy. I mean, that you have that feeling, if this company changes what their plan or where they're going or what they're doing again, I'm out of here. That's part of what we're going to talk about today. Why that happens and how that impacts people on all sides of the scale. And you literally have on this scale professional cheese movers. I mean, that's how they're wired. They're never going to change. And so stop trying to change them. We just have to understand one another so that we can relate with one another a lot better. And most importantly, function with one another in a work environment. More importantly, maybe in a relationship environment. I can't tell you how many of these I've done, and somebody goes, that's my husband, or that's my wife, and I never understand why they're so weird, but now I get it. This is that, a little bit of it. Now, this is not very complex. This is not very hard, but it is a test. So I'm going to give you some paperwork here in just a moment. Does anybody who's not eating got a second to help me pass? We'll pass them around. How about we'll pass them around. Split them up. Everybody take one of these. I didn't want you necessarily reading all of my stuff and giving away my whole presentation before I started. But this is called Thinking Wavelength. This is really awesome for a work team. So if you have a group who you work with, whether you work for them or they work for you, this will really help you understand your productivity, your creativity, the functionality of your company, and how well your folks relate to one another. You'll understand why you have some conflicts that regularly reoccur, because you've got some people doing this who are on the opposite sides of the spectrum. So this is called Thinking Wavelength, as I said. You've got the piece of paper. So let's jump in. Does everybody have a pen? I brought a cup of pens. Everybody's got one. You're not going to have to write anything. You're just going to make a circle. Can everybody make 6 circles and then do a tiny bit of math? No, we don't have anybody here like yesterday from Mathnasium to help us out with the math. This is simple enough. I think we can get there. Yeah, okay, awesome. So maybe use your phone calculator here. So what we're going to, just 6 questions, and it's how you relate to these 6 areas in your life. Now, I want to caution you a couple of ways. Number 1, I cannot stress enough how there is no right in this process. This is something you're hardwired with, like a personality. Has anybody done a DISC? I know Sue, or Myers-Briggs personality thing? Okay. Those are things that you're hardwired with. They are who you are, and you will vary very, very little off of what that personality profile tells you. This is the same way. This is a hardwired thing in how you think and the wavelength with which you think, and therefore there is no right. There's just you and who you are, and I don't want you to also get trapped in the idea of thinking only of work. We often are trapped because we spend so much time there. We trade our lives for money in some way. How do you separate that? That's really hard to do. But I want you to try. I want you to think about relationally. I want you to think about at home. I want you to think about in community. As you engage with people, when you do fun things, when you do sporting, when you do things that you volunteer for, as well as your work, how am I in all of those, even though you're going to lean a little heavily towards how you function in your work environment? So, I'm going to ask you 6 questions. You're going to circle the number 1 to 10 that corresponds with it. And the first one is how you relate to risk. 1, being somebody who absolutely avoids risk at all cost. And a 10 is somebody who creates risk and loves risk and is constantly risking, and they're driving the ones crazy. You know what I'm saying? And a 5 is obviously somewhere in between. So where are you on the scale from 1 to 10 on how you relate to risk? Okay, secondly, change. I mentioned move my cheese. Do you love change or do you hate change? And sometimes you have to say, well, I like change if I make it, but I don't like it if other people makes it. That would maybe put you in the middle of things. A 10 creates change when change is not needed for the sake of needing change in their life. You know what I'm saying? I literally have a friend who rarely ever drives the same pathway to somewhere twice. I mean, they literally, does this road circle around and get me back to there? And I'm so, sometimes I'm like, so how often do you get lost? And he's like, often, but I love it. It's new, so 10, lots of change. 1, really resistant to change of any kind, okay? And then number 3, how many variables can you have going on in your life, in your mind, in your thought process at once? So think about this as fish bowls, okay? So 1 has a couple of fish in their fish bowl. It's sitting on their head. There's 2 fish swimming around in there. A 10 has got a whole school of fish swimming in a big fish, you've seen on the Discovery Channel, a big fish ball. That's a 10. That's how many ideas, thoughts, concepts, projects that they have going on in their mind at once. And they're great with that. And somebody on the other side of the scale, that just makes their skin crawl to imagine that much going on. Thoughts, ideas, new ideas, projects, 800 projects at once versus, no, I need 1. I need singular focus. That's variable. And then number 4, thinking logically. Not if you do think logically, you do. But what's your process? So a logical thinker who is a 1 is going to need to go A, then B, then C, then D. Progression in 1 to 10 or progression in A to Z need to hit every step along the way. That's on the 1 side of things. And a 10 is going to go A, and then they're going to hit M, and then they're going to hit Z. And they're like, cool, that was great. I can fill in all the blanks. I don't need step-by-step detail, okay? Then question number 5, what is your relationship to ambiguity? How much ambiguity can you deal with and it be okay? A 1 is doing their dead level best to remove every essence of ambiguity from everything that they do in their life. They want to know when, how, what, where, about everything. Question. Wait. No, what about, and what about, and that's okay. That's okay. We need that kind of detail person to keep the folks on the other side of scale. The 10 they're great with ambiguity. I don't really need any detail. Just tell me that we're going to California and San Francisco, and I'll get there eventually. They may not be there on time. They may not be there prepared. But they'll get there one way or another, and they are comfortable with the ambiguity of not really having any detail of even why they're going there. They'll meet you there eventually. Wow. I know, that's uncomfortable, isn't it? For somebody. All right, so what's your relationship to opportunity? A 10 sees opportunity under every stone they ever turn over. They are opportunity all day long. They are new opportunity. Let me tell you about this new opportunity. You won't believe this new opportunity. There's another great opportunity that's just... And then a 1 on the other side is always seeing the problems related with opportunities. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. And again, this is not bad. We need both sides of all of these in our life unless we're going to run amok, especially in the context of a company, because without balance, then you veer to one side of this, and I'll talk about some illustrations of that momentarily, how big a train wreck that can be. So, 1 to 10. Any questions so far? Clarity? You need more information about any of these? See, you scored a perfect score already. Awesome. Way to go. So you're going to take that total, as you can see on the sheet, and then divide it by 6. And that is your thinking wavelength number. Now, a couple of things while you're doing that. I want you to encourage you to take this paper, and you should be able to remember. If you need to write any of the words down, I'll give them to you again. And do this again. It honestly took me probably 3 or 4 times of being able to mentally kind of tear down the silos of work and relationship and family and community before I really got a true number that was for me, because our minds just can't help but drift to work. And here's my work me, here's my work Mike, versus here's my home Mike and my community Mike, and whatever the rest of those pieces are for you. So sometimes when you're home and quiet and you're kind of reflecting, or for those of you who are high extroverts, when you're having great conversation with somebody, you're going to go, hey, I'm going to do that again. Do this with me. Take this piece of paper, walk through it again, because it'll have a little more poignancy and meaning if you spend some time really getting at where you're at. Now, we're not done. The reason we have these descriptions down below is I'm a learner who needs to hear and see. So this is the second part of the test. I'm going to read this description. I want you to read it with me. And I don't have my bifocals today, so if I stumble a lot, you'll forgive me. Give me some grace in that. But I'm going to read it out loud so you hear it, and then I want you to read along. I'm looking for what resonates for you. When you hear it, you'll know it, and sometimes there's 2, and we'll talk about where that puts you in your numbers. But I want you to hear these descriptions, and then I want you to see which one you go, oh, that's me, or oh, that's my husband, or or wife for you and I. Though. Anyway, so here we go. Thinking wavelength description. A grinder. Grinders get work done. Yay, I love grinders. They are detail doers. They grind, document things, are risk averse, like few variables, take things one step at a time, have a low tolerance for ambiguity, understand tasks and the need to solve problems. They handle administrative details well and deliver working drawings. Grinders do the same thing over and over again, year after year, and they love it. If you change the way they do things, you will hear from them. The world cannot operate without grinders. They proudly grind it out day after day. Okay, a minder. A minder can manage a unit team, having both the people skill and the organizational abilities to do so. They can supervise the performance of work. They function best as frontline supervisors, have the ability to diagnose problems, mind the store, put out fires. They can run a department or program or manage people. Minders are usually supervisors, teachers, chief engineers, section leaders, program leaders, and foremen. They can be counted on to keep existing processes and team functioning and running well. Okay, next is a keeper. Keepers are capable of managing the whole organization, possessing an appreciation for the administrative and the strategic. They have both concrete and abstract thinking skills, but will be biased to the administrative and operational work. They make great mediators in conflict, good personnel managers, directors of departments, ministry programs, plant managers, executive assistants. They handle details and see the broader vision. They handle many variables and are organized and good with people. And then finders. Finders are abstract thinkers. So they oftentimes don't complete the paperwork that concrete thinkers require. Some of you are laughing already because you either are or you know these people. Okay. They may appear to be loose cannons in a group structure. They are innovators and creators. Follow-through is not always their strength. They need grinders, minders, and keepers to follow in their wake of creativity. They sense and seize opportunities. They spot voids and fill them. Are bored by the steady state, love a new challenge, and must be thrown raw meat regularly. Finders are usually an entrepreneur, chief executive officer, chief visionary, leader of product or market, joint venture leader, or advanced development engineer. Finders want to ensure that their ideas work in the first generation prototype. Once they are sure that it does, they may hand it off to keepers to build upon. Then they find something else to develop. Conceivers. Conceivers are usually bright, articulate, and persuasive, but they don't bring things to closure. They work best in universities and research laboratories. They cannot manage others well. Their ideas rarely become commercialized. They may be criticized for all talk and no follow-through. They embrace risk, can make quantum leaps, welcome change, produce concepts, and many, many variables. Are opportunity-oriented, have a high tolerance for ambiguity, and love the 40,000-foot macro view of things.
Are you a 9 or a 10, Michael?
Shh. Conceivers are theorists typically employed as researchers, philosophy professors, theologians, and innovators, and are not great at leading a large group of people. So I'm just teasing, Linda. So we'll play with this a little bit as to where you think I might be at, but here's what I need you to do now. Find the one for you that resonated, or maybe the two that resonated, and we'll talk about what those are, and then we're going to basically marry the two scores. So that's why these numbers are here. A grinder is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, I did that really fast. Let me back up again. So grinder starts at 1. The lowest level of grinder, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 1 to 10 on your score of who you are, and you got that number. Now take your who you resonated with. And so if you were, I'm in the heart of a grinder, that's a 1 to 2. And if you're a 1 to 2 in your number, then they marry one another. If they don't, then you need to add them together and divide by 2. Does that make sense? So let's talk about that a little bit. Jeff,
Yeah.
did you resonate with one of those?
I think, actually, I was thinking grinders and finders. But
So there's
seem far
pieces
apart.
that they are quite a bit far apart. So that's where I would tell you to go back and revisit and take some time when you're, having some dinner or something, and think in context.
Are you saying I drink my dinner?
No.
Nice.
Drink, relax. I'm mentally eating and relaxing with you. And we are, but anyway, walk through that again. Yes, Wanda.
What if you find that you're three? And there's aspects of like, I'm definitely a minder,
Yep.
maker, and a
Yep.
finder.
And here's the dilemma in this, because many of you are solopreneurs. You have to wear all of the hats. Now, it doesn't mean that's who you are. If you could if you could strip out of work and take all of it away, what are the things that you love to do, that you experience joy with, that you really find fulfilling? That's the essence of who you are, not the big hat that you have to wear that's everything. And that's the struggle with doing this process is, I too, it's just me. And so I have to wear all the hats, and so now what do I do with that? Yes, Terry.
What was I supposed to do with the numbers on the grinder, minder, keeper, finder? What am I doing with those numbers?
So you're going to take the number from the
Because
front.
I was 2 of them.
Okay. So from the description, and then what was your number on the back that you came up?
5.
So you're a 5, and you were a
Minder.
minder keeper. So we would say that your number was a 5 that you came up with, and your number that you heard from the description is a 4. So you're a 4.5.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it just gives us a little more, hopefully, except for Jeff and Wanda at this point. But there's always a little bit of this, because it's really, really, really hard to separate what you have to do from what you love to do and who you really are.
Well, especially like you said, those of us that we're in the business.
You got to do it all. Yeah.
For 34 years,
Yeah.
it's been me, myself, and I.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I subcontract stuff, but I'm not overseeing those people, so.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough to be objective.
Yeah, because you've had to do it.
Right.
Now, you can't quit your job because you still got to do it all. But you can extrapolate, if you spend a little bit of time, who you truly are versus who you have to be.
Yeah, I like
Because most of you maybe have been moms. There are parts of that you love and there are parts of that you hate, but you still got to do it, right? If they're going to survive and so there are pieces of your job that you love to do, and you may not even really think about it, but you love doing it, you experience joy doing it, and there are parts that you're like, and that's one of the reasons we're talking about this today. What would be your first hire is one of the questions we're going to talk about, and it would be somebody outside of your comfort zone so that they're filling the slot with stuff that maybe you don't do exceptionally. Maybe you do it exceptionally well, but you find no joy in it, and it really grates on you. So I'll answer that question. I am almost at the top of Finder. I'm about a 7.8. That's why I've done something different often. And even when I didn't do something different, I reinvented as a business owner how I did it, because I needed a new approach about every 2 years. So I would approach it differently, look at it differently, re-educate myself on the expertise within that company and a new approach and new direction in order to go. But poor folks over here who had to relate to me in the companies that I worked with, I drove them crazy because I was constantly innovating and changing and moving things and making it better and making it better. And they were like, wait, let's just finish something. Let's finish anything. Let's bring it to completion. So I get your frustration, and I'm sorry. I hope you will understand me now that I understand you. But let's go a little further. Any other questions as to Jeff?
Do you think that this process works better? Like, say you had a group of teachers that all love being teachers, and you did this test with them, versus like a slice of the world right here where
No,
do different stuff.
because of even within those teachers, you would find 1 to 10. Because those teachers who are highly creative and they're always doing something fun and unique in the classroom versus the folks that are following the program and they're grinding it out. And there's no right or wrong in that. There is just who you are and how you approach the job that you do. So it doesn't, this does not at all say that you can't be a CEO as a grinder. You can, absolutely, and kill it because your focus is brilliant. Your focus is what's one of the most winning things about a grinder and minder. You see the goal line and you're driving the company to the goal line. However, you're going to need to hire some consultants to keep you from grinding everybody to death and creating some unique opportunities, entrepreneurial, new ways of doing business, keeping your eye on the horizon so we don't become somebody who had blinders on and the world left their company behind. I'm trying to think of who was the video company that the DVD video mailed to your house? Yeah, right. You know, Blockbuster or what was the one we mailed to your house? The DVDs.
Well, it used to be Netflix.
It was Netflix. Yeah, right. So Netflix changed, Blockbuster didn't.
Right.
So the idea of that being, if I'm over here and I'm Blockbuster and I go, let's just grind it out. We got a killer market share. We're killing it. We're going to keep killing it. And suddenly we're out of business because we didn't realize the world changed around us because we had our blinders on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Same thing on the opposite side of things. You can be an entrepreneur, business owner, anywhere here. But if you're here, you desperately need some administrative help because that's not your thing. It's not my thing. I am terrible at administrative work, and therefore I try to recruit people always, or hire people, or hire a digital consultant who can do it remotely. I do that often. I get a lot of work done by hiring online assistants in the specialty that I need at the time. Because I realize that for my company to be successful, I have to do this, not live over here where I'm not. Because I got to do what I'm gifted to do and live my purpose within the realm of this, and then I have to find help elsewhere. My wife has a great company, and I help her with her marketing and other things, and then she helps me a little bit over here, and my daughter helped me a lot over here to keep me from making an idiot of myself, which I've often done. Other questions as we continue going? Anybody still struggling with where they're at, the number? Rebecca?
I'm not really struggling that much, but I pretty much would blow 9 and 10 when I'm first going and thinking about this.
Yeah.
But then, the way my thoughts go usually, because I come up with these new ideas, I put these clouds out here, and then I organize my clouds.
Mm-hmm.
They're not A, B, C, D, but they're organized. I'm going from the concept to the binder.
So description-wise, you're more, I would say you're probably more of a high finder like I am. We see the 40,000 foot. We love it. We are great at combining brilliant ideas to make something even better. We need fresh meat, so that's where that means you got to reinvent yourself, recreate how you do it, change your approach to how you do it. Because if you get stuck as a finder, it can be really physically damaging to you. And I experienced that. I allowed myself to be stuck over here in something that was really a great thing for others.
Right.
But it was not great for me. And so at 2 years, I was killing it. I was knocking them dead. And then at 4 years, I was driving everybody crazy around me because I stayed too long in an area outside my number. And don't get stuck with number. This is a realm. I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. So who's brave enough to be the guinea pig that we put on the board? Put your name on there. Okay? Yes. So Sylvia, what was your number? Are you pretty confident where you landed?
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
It's 5.
You're a 5.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Perfect.
awesome.
Straight down the middle.
And let me see, Sylvia, make sure I spell your name right. So that makes it easy. It's right here. I'm going to do a different color. That way we can see you here. So we're going to say, okay, there's your sweet spot. So that's Sylvia's sweet spot. And let me tell you one other thing. So what do you think in the context of all of these profiles would be the ideal, best, most wonderful one?
No, there's not, because it's who you.
Not ideally, but there are some that you can't do without. You can't do without some grinders or you'll never get anything done, ever. And if the larger your company is, the more you need Sylvia, because the little dotted line here is to illustrate that a grinder is as far on the other side of the mountain from a conceiver as you can get, and they will never relate to one another. They will frustrate one another. They are the people who are always fighting in your organization. They're ticked at one another because the conceiver's moving the grinder's cheese. And good gosh, if that guy, girl, person comes up with another idea, I'm going to kill him. I just want to do what I do well and come to work and do my work and do it well and then go home. And darn it, you change, you follow? So they can't relate to one another. But a 5, a keeper, is the liaison between the two thoughts. They understand and embrace. This is why a keeper is very, very often possibly in HR. Relatability, a good HR person who has relatability from the CEO and the C-level folks to the folks that are getting things done down on the ground. The relatability to be able to communicate the message in a way that won't make the folks that are getting work done crazy. Without that person, the larger you get, the more conflict you'll have in your organization, probably the more turnover you're going to have in your organization, because these folks are just going to get ticked and leave. Or the opposite side of things, these folks will get ticked and leave if you run things and grind it and never allow any new ideas to come into the process of your organization. Does that make sense? Okay, so Sylvia's sweet spot is a 5. Now, you are, there is a realm that, that's not a good color, this is a better color, that is about 2 points on either side of where you're at. Outside of that sweet spot, you can live for about 2 years. 18 months to 2 years, you can function there. Outside of that, you're going to be incredibly frustrated. You're going to quit or they're going to fire you because you'll become unproductive and unsuccessful at doing that work. And that's anywhere on the scale. If this person has to be this person, you can do it for a little while. So as a solopreneur, if you are really at your heart a grinder and a minder, you really need a great friend or a business consultant that can help you see the big picture, build a big plan, build a financial plan, build a developmental plan. If you don't have that, you're likely to just grind and miss a lot of great opportunities that are out there for you. On the opposite side of things, if you're over here as a finder and conceiver, if you don't have somebody to help you function, now don't get me wrong, some of you have developed process. You are here, but you've built routine, process, etc. that helps you function here, and kudos for that because that's not easy to do from where you're at. But ideally, when you make your first hire or you hire your first company who does work for you, maybe it's your accounting. You hire somebody to do your accounting over here, or somebody to do your HR paperwork, or something like that on this side to help free you to live better in your purpose of being a finder or conceiver. So, yes, Miss Linda.
I just want to add something because of a lot of the experiences I've had working with a lot of people on this end, the finders and conceivers, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurial types. And a lot of the people in this room, I've learned a lot of people in chamber don't have employees. We don't have staff. There's a high percentage of.
True.
But you take this information and you think about who you serve and where they typically are, because probably those of you that are solo professionals are serving somebody, groups of people who are in that category, one of these categories. If you can understand how your profile fits with the people you're serving, then that knowledge, what he's telling us today, is going to be super useful to you in dealing with your ideal clients. I can't tell you how many guys that I've worked with over the years who want to hire me because I'm so able to see their stuff and make a plan for them. And so I go, you don't need me. That's not my thing. I don't do that. I'm clear over there myself. But they need people like that, and when you work with them, you see and you know. So you know how to serve those people because of whatever you're probably in a niche that suits your profile.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
knowing where they are and
Thank you,
using
Linda.
that in your
Yeah.
marketing.
So thank you. That really sets me up for some of the other pieces here. So remember, this is not just a work thing. We're leaning into that heavy because obviously you're here for that. You're networking. You're trying to get better at your company and serving your customers. So as Linda said, where are your customers on these scales? And the better you understand that, the better you can relate to them. Because if you're talking philosophy of why this is the most brilliant product ever versus some data of how this is going to make it simpler and easier for you to do your job, and here are 5 reasons. Let me give you 5 reasons why this is going to be the best thing ever for you. These people are like, yes, tell me. I'm going to grind it out, do better, and make it simpler and implement it. And folks over here are going, well, tell me the philosophy, the idea, the concept behind what makes that great. That's the language that you're speaking to a finder or a conceiver. Let's talk about relationship. Anybody when you read the description, you said, oh, that's, fill in the blank with their name? Your husband? You have a list? Awesome! Oh, list maker. I love her. Yes, my wife is a list maker as well, and she makes a list about her lists. And then if she misses something and completes it, she goes back and adds it to the list so she can cross it out. Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Brilliant. Yes. Yes. You do. Absolutely. Give yourself.
And I can see why I work really well with you.
Yes. So, tell me your name. Linda. Relatability in the context of your work environment. One of the things that I love to do is this for your company. And I do that for free because this is a blast. I love doing this. But when you understand your employees or your bosses or your coworkers.
My boss is on my list.
Yes. Yeah, what list is he on? So once you understand where you're at, I did this for a company. And they were moderately successful. The whole idea was they wanted to be more successful. They ended up with 100% of their staff on the right side of the chart because the CEO was almost a 10. And so he hired people like himself. And then they hired people like them. And so what do you think happens in a company like that? Okay, everybody. Okay, so a lot of brilliant ideas, a lot of concepts, a lot of dysfunction, and nothing ever got implemented. Nothing was completed ever. Because everybody else was expecting somebody else. Here's another thing about a conceiver. A conceiver thinks a thought, an idea, maybe verbalizes it, and in their mind it's completed. There needs to be no other work done. I thought about it, therefore, awesome. Work's done, let's move on to the next thought, an idea. You laugh, but that's literally how they function. So relatability of, okay, now how do I keep these guys from burning down the farm, burning down the company, because he's driving them nuts. Bonk. Well, and in this scenario, there were none of these people. So I said, guess what you need to do? finishers, some closers, some folks who get it done, grind it out, and get some work done. Because otherwise, even the folks, here's another piece of that. As a 10, he thought his 5.5 was a 1. Because it feels that way. It feels like, and you're making your list, it feels like a 5 is a 1 if you're a 10. Because they're always saying, but what about, have you thought about, but that won't work because, and they're just logically processing both sides of the idea, and you're like, you're my dream killer, you're a 1. You know, and that's not the truth at all. It's just how it feels in the context until they understood that, hey, 5.5, awesome. Now, get that 5.5 to hire you some 1, 2s, and 3s to get the work done. Don't let this guy, girl, hire anybody else, or you're just going to continue to stack the right hand, and this is going to be circles and circles and circles and circles, and nothing's ever going to get done. Yes.
On the other hand, I'll be in a company and I'll have a conceiver. They'll have 1s or 2s and will never have anyone like themselves because they don't want any competition. They're like,
That's
"I'm in
unfortunate."
charge And this is it. and
That's
I'm
unfortunate
your
because you don't free yourself to do some other things so that you can do the fun stuff
Right.
that is really your gifting.
And they'll never scale.
They'll never scale, right. A lot of this is the reasons that companies don't scale.
Right.
Is because they don't have people in the right seats in order for their company to be successful.
I was just going to say, I worked for 3.5 years in a small company with 4 employees, and the owner thought he was a grinder and thought he wanted conceivers, but really wanted to keep control of everything, and so he squelched the conceivers.
Right.
And so it was like what you're saying.
Yes.
It was dysfunction and
Yep.
unhappy employees
Yep.
who talk about him behind his back and nothing,
Yep.
and the company doesn't scale.
Absolutely,
So I
because
understand what I mean.
because if you're truly a finder or a conceiver, you can't help, and if you're truly a grinder and minder, it's who you are. It's not something you become; it's who you are, and therefore it's going to grate against the opposite side, and therefore you need to be understanding. That's why it's really important that companies know personality, what your personality of your team is, what your thinking wavelength of your team is. How do you relate and interact as a group? Because in your heart, you just hate that guy because girl, she drives you nuts. They drive you nuts. And it's just because they don't understand themselves well enough to create then filling in the gaps so that they can be productive and move forward to the next step or the next level.
We have a joke in our office. So my boss is a mechanical engineer by trade, but that's not who he is. That's just what he decided to do with his life. He's really a conceiver.
Sure.
And so pretty much everyone in the office is a grinder, minder, keeper.
Yep.
And the joke is that you just wait long enough, it comes up with a new idea. Just wait long enough. Don't really.
Don't worry about it. It may not happen.
Listen to what Sylvia's saying.
Change his mind, and so we were so frustrated in the beginning. We would talk about him behind his back and be like, "Oh my God, if he changes one more thing, we're gonna kill him." But what we figured out is, let him bitch because it's not getting done, because he'll change it in like a month anyways.
Right,
So
right.
that's how we deal with it.
Survival of
So what happens in that scenario, that's great, Sylvia, because in that scenario, people kind of lose their will to do good work because it's going to get crushed by an idea change. So why would I do this well if he's going to change it in a month or two anyway? I'm just going to wing it. I'm going to get my check. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to just grind it or mind it or keep it, and I'm not going to do it really, really well because I know it's going to change.
I have another scenario on the other spectrum where
Okay.
I had a grinder that was in charge of a $1.4 billion engineering project, and it had come to a slow standstill.
Yes.
Because he couldn't make the decision.
Yes.
Because he was afraid of making a wrong decision.
Yes, yes.
So when they brought me up there, and I was sitting there, and I said, give him a deadline.
Yep.
Came back in 2 weeks, and they're like, he can make decisions. So I said, he just needed a deadline. You give a grinder an open end, and they'll never come to a conclusion because they're afraid of making the wrong decision.
Yes, yes. Afraid of changing, afraid of making a decision until, and sometimes you'll find that they can't. You'll find some folks who can't. Yes.
I love what Sylvia said, and it really reiterates how she is a 5, because instead of fighting against it and continuing to sort of be angry and resist, she just adapted.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And I love that because with what I do, I'm looking at this in terms of interpersonal relationships at home.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, what if you are married, you're a grinder, and you're married to a grinder, or you're a grinder and you're married to a conceiver.
Yes.
And so what Sylvia says is great. You learn to adapt, and you fill in each other's strengths and weaknesses rather than fight against it.
Absolutely.
So working with Michael is good to bring him in your company for something like this, because, for instance, this grinder ended up, after working with him a year, resigning, saying, I realize I've taken the company as far as I can, but if I hadn't worked with him, he would have not come to that conclusion. And then we got a conceiver in there.
Yeah, because he's miserable. It's so odd that you can approach them and you could say, hey, would you feel better doing this? And they were like, oh yeah, I hate this. I hate having to make these decisions and do this. Yes.
Right.
One thing I appreciate you said, backing up a little bit, is right now we're talking about the situation scenario where there's groups of people in the same facility or business or whatever, but those of us that are on our own, I like what you said a little bit ago, is put somebody around you, get around people, whether it's a friend or another business person. And that's something that I've done over the years, is I like to pick other people's brains with my problems.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll say, because I get so stagnant with, it's like, I can't move now because I need input.
Yeah.
You know, even though I'm very much the 5, I love the interaction. So if sometimes it's my husband, but we can tend to do this because we're so much alike. So it's better. Yeah. He's always like, I've enjoyed listening to that, but why don't you call your sister? She's
Well, he actually says he enjoyed listening. I'd like to give him my husband a lesson.
He enjoyed the concept.
Ding,
and
ding,
doesn't
ding.
want to walk
Yeah.
through the process.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
that was nice, but I'm not walking it out with you. So my sister is like my coach. She's from Gilbert, and we will get on the phone for an hour.
Great.
And,
Awesome.
Good for you.
That's what we're all
What
here
about the
for,
next
each other.
step of that, in that potentially you could look for somebody who can fill the slot you need and trade services?
Yes. Well, that's true. He's the one that talked me into getting my social media guru, because I was driving myself nuts trying to be everything and do everything.
Do it all yourself, yeah. Some people, when I did that work, and it wasn't often, I had clients that I just told them it would serve them best if they didn't do social media. Because they were just they couldn't get into the conceptual side of things enough that they were actually going to damage their brand by the dumb things they were doing and saying. And I'm not saying you were doing that, Terry, but you were frustrated, right? You were like, I'm spinning my wheels, spending so much time, I'm not getting bang for my buck. And now,
I'm getting bang for my buck.
Exactly.
My
And you know you
last
are.
customers
Yeah.
came from a Google search. 3 of them are out of state.
Yay, awesome. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
So lean into your strengths and your hardwiring.
Hire people for other
And then when you can, trade for or hire people to fill in those gaps. Let's go, Michelle, you led us into, I want to lean a little bit more into relationship. And if you don't know, Michelle's relationship guru at this point, matchmaker extraordinaire, and it's her company. And so what is the dynamic? Anybody, I asked this earlier, anybody relate to a spouse in this way? You know what where the ballpark of where they're at? Okay. Anybody that's willing to share and talk about your...
We can talk about Jim.
Go ahead. Yeah, we'll do both.
I would say I need to look for somebody in my life who's a finder conceiver, because both my husband and I lean pretty heavy towards the grinder.
Awesome.
So we are a well-oiled machine at home, and we run
Yeah.
our household like a CEO.
You get it done.
But there are times where we have to take a break and be mindful about,
Yes.
we need to have a little bit more fun or change things up a little bit. We are on a routine.
Yes.
Mhm.
Routine, rhythm-driven folks can often get into, one of the things I tell people, be careful of the ruts you build, because they are hard to get out of, especially in a marriage or a relationship. So when both of you are on the left side of the spectrum, it's very easy to get stuck without somebody to inject some new ideas into, hey, try this for fun, kind of thing. You guys, you think you're both left?
Yeah, I'm a 4.2, so I'm
Okay.
a little bit towards keeper.
Okay.
He's probably like a 2.
Okay.
He's a pretty hard grinder.
Awesome.
You know, he always has been because of his education was
Yeah.
long. He's a doctor, so you
Okay.
grind through that, and then
Process.
he's an ultra marathoner, so you
Yeah.
grind through that, and it's almost like he's conditioned himself
Yes.
Yeah.
to be a grinder. Like I said, I'm a little bit more towards the keeper. I'm almost slightly intimidated sometimes by conceivers, because they make me feel, I mean, it's my own insecurity, but they make me feel a little stiff,
Yes.
you know?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
like sometimes when people have a, what's that?
Loosen up, lady.
Yeah, like sometimes that's how I feel, like when people are
Don't have
spontaneous,
to
like,
plan everything.
let's just go see a movie in 20 minutes. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
What? 20 minutes?
Who does
Are
that?
you
I buy my
crazy?
seats 2 days in
Yeah.
advance. you know?
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Very, very, very good stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
So, Rebecca, you were going to share as well.
I think my husband, I'm gonna say, is around a 2.
Okay.
And I'm blowing somewhere between an 8.3
Yep,
and a 9.
yep, okay.
Wow.
So you guys are pretty far, that's a pretty big contrast.
Yeah.
So-
I'm always getting, why do you have to question everything? Because there might be a better way to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, so yeah.
No, we just do it, get it done. And you're like, wait. Yeah. So the dynamic of that, imagine in your relationship, if you don't recognize the difference between the two and you don't value the difference in the two. Because many times that's where those giant conflicts keep coming in, because I honestly would have, before I did this and before I understood this, really been annoyed by anybody on the left side. They drove me nuts because I did not understand their great value of getting things done.
That's a great word, to value.
Absolutely. The value of people who get things done, I totally appreciate it, because I can't function without that help. And on the other side of things, they get stuck in a rut if I can't help them see in some way there might be a better way to do this that would save energy. So I'm going to have to sell hard on saving time, saving energy, saving productivity, so we can go do something fun. I don't want to do anything fun. I want to grind and just do it. Let me do it my way. So you can see the context of relationship, kids, family, loved ones, the dynamic of this, nonprofits that you work with. This is every area of life. You aren't hardwired this way for work. You are hardwired this way. I really appreciate in the past when I've worked with the Chamber, some really great folks across the spectrum, diverse, and that's great in a company, so that you've got some folks who can get things done, and you've also got some folks that are thinking about what's new, what's happening, what can we do better, how can we create a new, whatever that may be. In a company, you need both sides of those things, and you need to understand one another and appreciate one another enough that you aren't living in frustration because of lack of understanding. In most cases, it's what it is. You don't understand that person's personality, or you don't understand that person's hardwiring, and therefore you are constantly at odds.
This is why I love Tammy.
I think Tammy, Tammy, as I've met her, has become one of my new favorite people in the world. Because Tammy gets stuff done. Absolutely. She gets it done. She kicks it in the butt.
On there.
I was
especially in about the minder, almost a keeper.
Yeah, but you shared with me, and hopefully this is it's not something you mind sharing, you actually ran a big organization previously, right?
I was the CEO of the county fair.
Absolutely, huge,
Oh,
big deal. So it doesn't matter where you're at on this. You can run a company, but you need the understanding of where your slots are that are empty, that need to be filled, and a lot of that is on scale. As many of you are solopreneurs, where's your first, and it may not be you're hiring a person, you may be hiring a consultant to do social media, marketing, data entry. I just hear data entry and it kills my soul. I mean, I'm like, you do not want me doing data entry. It will be bad. Yes.
You can't even spell.
I can't. You're right. I can't spell. I don't even draw straight lines very well. I'd rather draw like this. Anyway,
Because you
Terry.
want to color outside the box.
I color way outside the box.
So I was going to bring up, and maybe you can articulate it for me. There's times when, because we work alone, we get stuck, and you don't even realize you're stuck until a huge problem arises. I moved here 9 years ago, and I approached business the same way I did back in Washington State. Well, I built that business for many, many years with a certain type of approach, and I got here, and I was getting doors slammed on me left and right. I couldn't rotate, and it took going down to Green Valley about the 6th time and coming back, sitting on the side of the road. I'll just be transparent. I was in tears because I'm like, what the heck am I doing wrong? And I had to realize I was stuck. I had to realize I needed to reach out because I was in an old pattern because it was comfortable, but it wasn't working.
Yeah. No.
And so we have to be able to realize when we're stuck, when we're in old patterns, and when you work alone, it takes sometimes something really difficult like that to show you. Well, then when you do see it, I mean, that's when I started reaching out to my sister and other people and going, okay, something's wrong here.
So you lacked perspective
I was
in the context.
too in a tunnel.
So you were, here's the way we do things, here's how I've always done things, it's worked in the past, why wouldn't it work now? And so the rest of you guys, and how would you approach that same scenario?
And at first I didn't know I was stuck.
Yeah. How would you approach
Well, I was
it?
going to say, as somebody who's more of a grinder, I know I need more like Rebecca and Michael in my life. Like I know I need somebody who's like an 8 and 9. But grinders, at least I'll speak for myself, maybe have a hard time sometimes asking for help.
Yes.
Because we're so used to getting things done ourselves. And
You don't need help, you can get it done.
It's a little scary. We like helping other people.
Sure.
But it's a little scary to ask for help.
Yes.
You feel kind of needy.
It is. It is. And it's one of the reasons, as you guys notice, that Jeff and I are the only dudes here. It's compounded when you're a guy about asking for help or think you need help. We're just really dumb about that. I'll just admit to you, as a group of guys, we are the last people on the earth that will ask for help in most cases. So the dynamic is then you reached out for help, but and that's where I'm at in the context of, as you have this network of people, a huge network of the Marana Chamber and other networks that you're part of, you need to lean into the network, or maybe even a round table or something to where you're gathering with people who can help you with where you're at. And in the context of you do that, often what happens, you guys know this, if you do that, your personal stuff can often get sorted in the same way because you're stuck and you don't want to talk about it. Nobody ever wants to go to a counselor because, oh my gosh, I'm not that broken. I'm teasing because I've been many times.
It reminds me, I'm kind of, this is relating me, I'm jumping back into my corporate world immediately where I started, and then I'm trying to now relate it to my business. I was a project manager for 10 years, And
Yes.
I am right on between minder keeper. So I was a good project manager because I was corralling cats.
Yeah.
And I had to navigate through waters, and I had
Yep.
grinders and minders in my company, but a lot of times I would have clients and customers that we were doing the project for that were the finders and the conceivers.
Yes.
So I was constantly straddling between the guys on the job getting the job done, who were my grinders and minders,
Yep.
versus the company, and navigating the waters
Absolutely.
and telling the finders and conceivers, no, that's not in our scope.
Yes.
And I did great. I was like right in my zone. When I started my own company, kind of what Terry was saying, it's kind of like ask for help.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I know how to do this.
I can do this.
And I had so many people for like the first 2 years going, you need a coach, you need a coach, you need to talk to somebody, you need some help. And I'm like, I'm fine. I am fine. And so about a year and a half ago, I got a coach, and I was like,
Absolutely.
just like, wow,
Yeah,
okay, because we work a lot in this realm. We
Yes.
work a lot around of what is keeping us from moving in a direction, and
Yes.
and it really is.
Yeah, and the larger the company, the more of these folks that you're going to deal with.
Right. But just for myself now,
Absolutely.
having reached out and gotten help, it's definitely
Yes.
helping me navigate out of my keeper
Absolutely.
mindset.
Because it doesn't matter where you're at on the spectrum as a solopreneur, you can't really relate to the other group without some outside input.
Mm-hmm.
So these training sessions, let me just plug that a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a great deal. Last month I really, really enjoyed. I stepped into some things there that I hadn't even thought about that really resonated and helped me as a solopreneur get prepared to do what I do better. And so I want to encourage you to make sure to put this on your calendar and invite other folks, because this is a big deal for you in helping you do what you do better and keeping fresh perspective inserted into your process so that you can grow your company and do better. So a few other things I wanted to share in the context of this. I don't want to leave any other questions. Thanks for the engagement. You guys are great. I love that you're giving me some input about where you're at, where other people are at. That makes this a lot more fun. But in the context that we talked about personally, we talked about companies. This can literally put your family on the chart. Where are they all? Take this home and give it to your kids. I want you to, family, whoever your dynamic of who you interact with a lot, I seriously want you to take it and then take some time and rethink the questions and try to tear down the walls of your silos from all of the different areas of your life and say, okay, Mike, the whole person, at work, at home, when I'm out with the guys, when I'm doing this, who am I? And this is my true number, not my work Mike, but my all of me Mike. And so you need to do that work for you, because in the context of your personality profile, in the context of your hardwiring in personality and in Thinking Wavelength, and then there's multiple other hardwiring that you get into in the context of a life plan. You need to understand those things about yourself so that you can relate and engage and be more productive in your great relationships that you want more of. And I would encourage you as well, think in the context of how you can do more in a networking environment of finding people who are not just like you, because that can be uncomfortable, right? Finding somebody who's over here who maybe isn't like us at all, or over there who isn't like us at all, that can speak into some ideas and concepts of how to do your business better.
I have an abstract thought.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking up again, but.
Yeah, go.
So if it's not good timing.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's great,
The
Karen.
abstract thought is, sometimes when we think about a one-on-one or a coffee, we're thinking of it in the concept of what can I do in their business and what they can do for my business.
Sure.
And that. My abstract thought was getting together with other people that are different, because just having a conversation, I've been sitting down down with people and they go, well, what about this or that? We didn't even sit down. That's not even why we got together.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
comes up and you're like, whoa.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So being chamber people
Yes.
and mixing and
Yeah.
lunch and learns, there's a lot more to it if we just want to get outside of that.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's just a mixer. Oh, I'm just going to, get in the thought that there's more, it's a bigger picture, because sometimes just, maybe talking to Donna, we don't even know that we're going to help each other, and we didn't meet to maybe talk about business.
Yes. Yes.
So we just met because we want to get to know each other. So it was an abstract that, wow, we need each other more than we think, and you've got a whole chamber here.
So
you can just go enjoy somebody and
absolutely.
get a gem out of it.
Absolutely. So to relate to that a little bit further, as solopreneurs, depending on your personality in the context of being an introvert or an extrovert, confession, I'm a pretty high introvert, and so that's about how you get your energy. How you get your energy. So I need to go away, recharge my batteries to get my energy. Extroverts, they need to be around people to get their energy. So as a solopreneur, as you're doing this, it's very easy for me, and I got in this rut of last year. I just was grinding it out at home, and I was miserable and frustrated, and I'm trying to get the wheels turning on my business, and I wasn't engaging in community in a network like this one. And so I was frustrated, and I knew what it was, but just like, duh. I mean, what do? When I network and engage with people, I find the greatest amount of success, the most amount of aha moments. So I have coffee, and I just am being relational with somebody. I want to know about your business, but I also want to know about you. And in that, so many revelations of, I hadn't thought of that, or those brilliant ideas that you're just on the cusp of because you're not engaging with people. If you're an extrovert, my wife is not a high extrovert, but moderate. I have to push her occasionally. Hey, you've been alone too long. Get out and get with some people, because you're like getting, you know what I'm saying? You need to be with some people and not me for a little bit. How about that? So she needs that, because that's where her energy comes from. And so then I have to recharge my batteries, but I still have to get out and engage with people, or I get stuck in my mindset, and it really closes down my perspective, and I don't relate in my own business very well without having these opportunities to engage with other people.
And not for any particular reason. It's not to go get something,
Yes. We're not going to do a teaching this moment on networking, because there's other folks who do that really well. But yeah, just engaging, asking questions, and make it more than just what do you do. Make it your company, make it your other things.
And Michael, you said you had the questions that correlate to our answers.
Yeah, it's just a word, and it's how you relate to, fill in the blank with the word. In fact, I'll give those to you. Number one is how you relate to risk. 2 is change. 3 is variables. 4 is thinking or logical thinking. 5 is ambiguity. And 6 is opportunity. How do you relate to opportunity? So what I've done today, this is one of the tools that I use in LifePlan. It's a very abbreviated tool. Most of the tools are like half a day. It's a 2-day process in a LifePlan. But we really farm some of these hardwiring things as well then as spend the second day on our passions and direction and purpose, and really help folks get all of the perspective that they possibly can get, to where then they get revelation and breakthrough, to where they're living their life on purpose in the way they were meant to live. So some of that, ideal people for me are people who are in transition. They've left a job, they're leaving a job, they're transitioning, they're retiring. They're a mom going back into the workforce. They're intimidated, they need some help, they need some clarity. People who are stuck, people who are burned out, frustrated, That's ideally people who are suited for life plan because they're typically frustrated enough to make a change in their life. This is great. You can learn a lot of things in a life plan with the other 15 tools. But I find that if there's not a little bit of urgency there,